Hello, Thirst Buckets. We have a delightful treat for you, if I do say so myself. Today, I get to speak with Raleigh Ritchie, also known as Jacob Anderson, also known as Grey Worm from the HBO hit show Game of Thrones. Thanks so much for joining us. My co-host Bim is in London right now, and she is so torn up about missing this, but I'm so glad that you're here in the studio, and I can't wait for us to dive into our conversation.
I don't know how comfortable I feel being
a thirst object?
An object of thirst. I don't know. It's just weird. It's
what?
I have no self-esteem. That's what it is. No.
Oh, that's interesting.
What a way to start.
Yeah, but why? I mean, so it's odd for you to know that people are out there lusting after you?
That's pretty odd. Yeah.
Like people are like, here's this poster of you, sign it. Is that?
Yeah, but that's not like necessarily thirst, is it? That's just like, oh,
it's a kind of thirst.
Your name on this piece of paper.
Right, because I like you and you're attractive and you're on this show that I really like. So I want a piece of you, and this piece of you is your signature. Give me your signature. That's thirsty.
Okay, yeah. You made a pretty good case for that.
Then. Okay. Yeah. So you're uncomfortable with that?
Yeah, I don't know why. I've like backed myself into a corner here where I'm like, I can't really explain it.
Well, who did you have thoughts like that about when you were a teenager, when you were like coming up? Like, who was on your bedroom wall that you were kind of like, oh my God, I would die if I met this person?
Well, like Beyonce was definitely, when I was growing up, was I probably thought I was in love with her.
Yeah.
And I probably thought it was mutual in my head. I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Well, now that
she sings in the song.
Yeah. About what?
About me.
Oh.
She's not, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like an unhealthy thing. That's like an unhealthy teenage thing.
No, I think that's a normal teenage thing. I think it's a normal pop culture consumer thing, right? Like that's.
Yeah. It's like the thing of like some artists are like, I want to make you feel wanted when I play. Or maybe it's not. I don't think that was the case for Beyonce. I actually think like a lot of Destiny's Child was about empowering women. Mm-hmm. I listened to a lot of music that like empowered women as a kid, and probably didn't really realize it.
Like what? Beyond Destiny's Child and Beyonce, what?
I loved Spice Girls when I was when I was growing up.
If you want my future, forget my past. If you wanna get with me, better make it fast.
And I think because I love Spice Girls, I had a lot of female friends at school. Because boys were like, they're for girls. They've got girls in their name. The word girls is in Spice Girls' name, so that means it's for girls.
Did you feel like kind of pinned in by the idea of what boys and girls should like when it comes to music and film and TV and stuff like that?
Not really. I don't think until I was like a teenager, I started to feel like, oh, I've got to be like conscious about what I tell people that I listen to or whatever.
So you listened to a lot of pop, and that's when you kind of started to feel more, when you were a teenager, that's when you kind of just started to feel more comfortable expressing that you were listening to that music?
Sort of, but I think it was just more that like I grew out of that kind of music, and then the kind of music I liked, I didn't really know anybody that liked it anyway. So I was just comfortable listening to what I listened to. I was like I listened to a lot of like Soulquarians, just that whole group.
Yeah.
Like Bilal and Erica.
Oh my God, I love Bilal.
So like nobody was listening to neo soul really at my school. And I actually like made friends, like really good friends with a few people that did, because then we could talk about music. But yeah, I think I just lost interest in trying to like impress people with music, with like my musical taste. It's kind of, I always find it really difficult to actually pinpoint how the artists that I listen to like directly influence my music, because I think
songs. So how did you get to that point?
I think it's because when I first started, like I said, I was listening to a lot of American soul. Like I would just naturally sing like that, and I think a lot of people in the UK sing with kind of American accents. It felt really weird to put out music that was really personal, or I wasn't even putting stuff out then, to sing things that were like really personal in somebody else's voice. Like it just didn't feel right to me. And I'm not like, I'm not throwing any shade at people that do that, but it just feels like it made natural sense to just like speak. I think that's what I'm doing. I'm like trying to speak to somebody who understands. I'm like, this is how I feel. What's your response?
Well, I think that comes across very well in your new single, Time in a Tree.
I try to leave, sometimes I'm standing in the way. I'm on the edge of crying all the time, 'cause I can't human right what they say. I get wound up from the ground up, and I don't know why.
It feels very timely because so many of us are trying to escape everything that's happening in the world right now. And you have part of your lyrics are, I need a place just for me, somewhere that I can be free, keep the faith and just be. So do you feel comfortable? Because you said, it's a little hard being personal in front of people, but can you talk about what inspired that song?
I wrote that song and I was just exhausted. I was like, I understand that I'm in a very privileged position to be able to do what I love doing as a job. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't stop you from every now and then feeling exhausted or feeling like you could do more. I always feel like I could do more. And I think Time in a Tree, for me, that song it just speaks to like a point where I kind of reached a bit of a boiling point, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like I like wake up in the morning and I already feel like I'm on the back foot. And I think as well, it's like you say, there's so much going on in the world at the moment. There's so much to like keep track of, and it feels like impossible. And you kind of like you constantly find yourself like it's very easy to find yourself on the fence because things change so much. Like you can almost be like shifted. It's like if you have a belief system and there's things that you believe in and things you care about, and you can like stand in that one spot and be like, well, this is what I believe. And then something changes and you don't even know that you're being like carried away from that thing that you believe in because you're like following this one thing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you have to keep track of that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's an exhausting place to be. Sometimes I just feel like I just want to like step out of everything and just be like, I'm not going to engage.
Yeah.
But then if you do that, then you're not like, it's part of being human, isn't it? It's like looking out for other humans, hopefully. So
what do you do when you want to unplug from all of that? When you're like, I can't look at Twitter anymore. I'm just going to do what? What do you do?
Hang out with my girlfriend. I like play with my dog.
What's your dog's name?
He's called Larry.
Larry. Okay. Yeah. Nice dog name.
He is. He's great. But I listen to music. I watch films. I think like watching films or TV is like my primary source of like just escape. You mentioned this a little bit, but as you lose a little bit of your anonymity, you keep losing it a little bit every day. How do you make sure that you're remaining true to who you are? Like the base level Raleigh. I think more than anything, the thing that I need to watch out for in terms of that is to not get grumpy. Like it's not like I don't like I'm quite shy. Like I don't really go. I don't court attention at all. Like I keep my head down.
That's so interesting that you've chosen to be a musician and an actor, and you're so shy.
I know. Sometimes I feel like those things like chose me a little bit.
So part of what we do here at Thirst Aid Kit is look at the way pop culture shapes desire, right? Okay. So what are 3 songs that are on your baby making playlist? If you were to just like put that on, what would be like 3 that you had to have? 3 songs.
That's really hard. Okay. I Want You, Marvin Gaye. That'd definitely be there.
Okay. Classic.
Maybe something by Anderson .Paak. You know the No Worries album?
Yes.
Yes, Love. Control, Scissor, just the whole album. You could just run the whole album.
Okay.
That's 3, right?
Sure.
I didn't say songs.
No.
Who, like, he doesn't look like me, but, you know, he looks like me.
Yeah.
And he's, like, the lead in a film about fighting aliens. Like, that was really inspiring to me. Like, I never saw, there weren't a lot of people of colour that were, like, in the UK anyway. Like, there's like a film like Barbershop. Like, I had to get that from off the internet, like dodgy.
Yeah.
Like, in order to see it, because we just didn't import to the UK.
Yeah.
So, like, I think Will Smith just by like the fact that he's so charismatic, but yeah, he was like, he looked like me, and I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to seeing somebody like a person of color being like anchoring a story. Like, we make a lot of period dramas in the UK, and like, we're deleted out of those stories. So, you know, yeah, I think Will Smith was like a huge influence on me, and he was somebody as well that like he made music, and he made films, and he just made stuff, and it never seemed to be an issue that he was like more than one thing. And because I was into so many things, I was like interested in doing so many things. I think that really like pushed me to feel like, to think in that way, that like it's okay to just follow what you're passionate about.
Right.
So yeah, Will Smith would be mine.
Well, you're on a very popular show
Yeah.
called Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So thinking about the idea that you didn't really get to see a lot of people of color, a lot of men that look like you in these period pieces.
Yeah.
Now you're in a show where sometimes the audience seems to feel more comfortable seeing dragons and people walking through fire than they do seeing a person of color in these kind of roles.
Yeah.
How did that feel for you to get cast in this show?
Well, I think like I had a sense when I first started that like I was like, I would never be in that show. Like, and I had friends that were in it, and like all my friends were auditioning for it. And I didn't think I would ever have, like, I just didn't think that was a thing. But I feel like, yeah, it's, I think everyone can be better with that. Like, I think in terms of like mainstream, like the stories that we're telling, we could just be better. Just do it. We don't need to talk about it so much. We don't need to like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's actually not that hard.
Yeah.
There's lots of like amazing actors from that aren't white that would love to work on something. For me, I feel like a responsibility being like, you know, and I know Natalie does as well. I don't want to speak for her, but like we both feel like a real responsibility as the kind of two only recurring characters of colour in the show. I mean, actually, there's Indira Varma as well. I shouldn't remove her from that. Sorry, I forgot what the question was.
No, just
like,
how did it feel to be cast in this show where the audience sometimes gets a little pissy about there being people of color in this fictional world, but because
it's weird. It's like the way it feels is that sometimes I'm like I love working on the show, so like there's elements of like I feel like defensive sometimes where I'm like, but I'm there, like I find it difficult sometimes when like people have said in the past like there are no black people in Game of Thrones, and it's a bit like, ouch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, I understand it.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a weird thing where it's like it's almost like that, like because I'm there, like I'm in the door, I'm in the show, so like I'm really proud of being in the show, and I love the people I work with, but I do know that it could be better at the same time. You know, I'd be lying if I said like, oh no, it's fine, it's no problem. So yeah, I think it feels like conflicting sometimes.
Yeah. Grey Worm of the Unsullied is a warrior who's been castrated.
Yes.
What kind of research did you do to prepare for this role? Like, did you have to look up the history of eunuchs?
I didn't have to. No, I did. I was curious. I was curious, and then realized that I didn't really fit the remit of of eunuch at all. I think I would have a much higher voice. I think eunuchs didn't really have any muscle. Like they just kind of like become like sort of like Jabba the Hutt, like, and then
I had to do a little head tilt.
that was an amazing head tilt.
You mean, okay, so because from what you've researched, it seems like they didn't have muscle tone or whatever, so they're just kind of...
Like, they wouldn't... I don't think there would be a eunuch army.
But again, the world of Game of Thrones is a magical place, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's dragons.
Yeah.
There's dragons and zombies. That's just like, it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
I want to see you. Please.
So much of the way that sexuality is expressed in film and TV is kind of reduced down to genitalia. So when you're thinking about Grey Worm and Missandei, did that relationship kind of help you unlearn some things about sex and the expectations surrounding sex?
Do you know what? I'm really proud to be... I think that storyline is really unique on TV in terms of like how it deals with sex. And particularly that scene last year.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy to me the amount of men that would like tweet me or say to me like, they'd be like, oh, how do you have sex then? You'd be like, where's your imagination? Like, what do you mean, how do you have sex? Like, it's not just about putting a thing in a thing, like,
right.
And I thought that, I just thought they handled that really well, that storyline last year. And it was kind of like, it touched on like, kind of, I think in some way, like disability in sex and how that's looked at, and how like bodies don't have to be just tools. They can be like things, they can be a big element of sex is about acceptance, right? It's about acceptance of yourself and of somebody else. And like being naked with somebody is a very revealing thing, obviously, and can be really humiliating if you don't feel a reciprocation of like acceptance. And I really loved that scene was all about that, was about these two people accepting each other and finding each other sexy, like regardless of, you know, the like atrocities that Missandei's been through and the quote unquote like manhood that's been taken away from Grey Worm. They accepted each other and they found a way to be sexual and to be sensual with each other. I just thought that was just really well handled. And you get it all the time. I get it all the time. People are just like, oh, you got no dick, huh? You can't do this, you can't do that. No. And it's just like, I don't know why I'm putting that voice to it, because it's not everybody that has that voice, but but yeah, it is quite like a laddie thing, I think. Definitely back at home. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day, I just thought it was just the grossest thing ever. Someone asked me if I was there when another cast member had sex scenes. And I was like, what world do you live in where you think that like that? So
they think you're just watching porn on set?
I think they literally think, like, maybe they just watch it through that lens. They just they just think the show is porn because occasionally there's like naked bodies on it. They're like, they think it's just like everyone's just naked all the time. Everyone's just walking around naked all the time on set. It's weird.
That's interesting. Okay, so you've talked about the men who kind of approach you with narrow-mindedness about Grey Worm and his sexuality. But do you also get any men who come up to you or tweet at you who may have suffered from erectile issues, or other people who are not gender conforming, who are like, this helped me realize that there are intimacy beyond?
Surprisingly not. No.
Interesting.
No. That is interesting, because to be honest with you, I hadn't even thought of that. Like I'd thought of that as in terms of like the context of that scene and in terms of the context of them as a romantic couple, but yeah, I hadn't thought that anybody would actually say anything to me, and they haven't. It tends to be, but I think that's as well because like sex is still a thing that's like, it's big. not for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, like, it's a big thing to talk about because it's so private. And it like a lot of people have a lot of shame wrapped up in sex because of the way that, I think sometimes because of the way that sex is like portrayed in music and films and TV and like and schools. Like, I never had sex education in my school. Like, we just didn't do it. They didn't talk to us about it. So it's like there's this like whole like hush shame secret thing about it. So I think if anybody was it did relate to that storyline in that way, then I don't know if they'd necessarily feel comfortable to bring it up. But I say here now that if like I would never shame you if you wanted to talk about that. Like, it's, you know,
Oh, that's sweet.
anybody.
What do you want people to take away from your character as a whole with Grey Worm?
That's a really good question. I've got to be careful as well.
Right, yes. I mean, if you want to, give a little spoiler, a little tease us a little bit, because the show's not coming back on for another year, right?
I don't actually know when it comes back. I genuinely don't know when it comes back.
Yeah, I think it's 2019.
For me, the thing about Grey Worm has always been like, he's traumatized. Like, he's a character that's just like experienced a lot of trauma, and like he becomes kind of like human. He's like had his humanity just stripped from him, and he's like becoming human as the show goes on. And I think if anyone takes anything from that, it's that like, if you feel like your humanity's been taken away from you in some way, or you feel like your trauma is like holding you down and holding you back, that it's possible to come back from that. It's possible to come out of that. And often it sounds a bit corny, but often it's like love that takes you out of that. Like, whether it's your friends or like romantic love or whatever it is. Like,
how do you think Grey Worm has changed your ideas of what masculinity is, if he has?
To be honest, if anything, I feel like he's reinforced ideas about masculinity that I agree with anyway.
What?
Like I said earlier on, like when I was a kid, I used to listen to Spice Girls. So most of my friends were girls, and which is like a really weird. Even that in itself is like a strange thing that should even be the case. So like, I've never been thought of by like, I'm not like a huge sports fan. Like, I like some sport, but like I'm not what you'd say like, I'm not what you call like a traditional like alpha. And so I've never thought that you had to do this or you had to do that in order to be considered a man or a real man or whatever. Like, I don't think those laws or whatever really exist. It's all a construct. I mean, it's all a construct anyway.
Right,
but
yeah.
like, you know, so I feel really glad. Like, you know, I could have grown like loads and loads of muscles and stuff to play that character. But like David and Dan, the showrunners, didn't push me to, and I kind of appreciated that, because I think it's nice that there's like a different type of, like, he can still fight. Masculinity and femininity both exist on like a really, 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 really wide spectrum. It's almost like an infinity spectrum. And then there are things in between masculinity and femininity, and all of those things are human. I think like the most important thing is like, who are you as a person? What do you believe in? Who do you love? Who do you want to be? Who have you been? Like, all of these things are what's important. It's not like how far can you kick a ball, or but that, you know, again, even that's it. If that's what you're about and that's what you love doing, then good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't. It's funny, like I've never really talked to anybody about this stuff like publicly, I guess. But like, it's taken me a long time to feel comfortable with who I am, and to feel comfortable with like not always existing in those like quote unquote masculine spaces. I am comfortable with it now. I'm like, more comfortable with who I am as a person. But it takes work. Like those things take work, I think, for everyone to just like start to feel comfortable about who you are and how you identify.
Right. Do you think that you're going to look for more roles where you can kind of expand on that, and where so that other people, young people coming up, can see images of a character who is not confined to being super masculine or super feminine or anything like that? So does that interest you to look for more roles where that's kind of, there are blurred lines?
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to. I think that is really important, isn't it? Like that does come into the representation. That comes into representation on screen and in music. Like I get sent stuff all the time that's like to play like the jock or like the, you know, like the amount of times I see athletic in a description, I'm like, but that's great. And you know, if you're into athletics, then amazing, and do it and be passionate about it. But athletic as like a descriptor for a person's character is kind of weird. And I felt like I say this, but it's like for women it's 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely want to, I'm very conscious about the kind of thing I do next, if like whatever that is in terms of acting. Like, yeah, I don't want to put toxic images out into the world. I don't want to be a part of putting toxic images out into the world. There's too many of them already. Right. I don't want to add to that pile.
Right. So you feel like you're kind of combating those images that you grew up with that pressured you to be something maybe that you aren't for a little bit?
I want to. I don't know if I am at the moment, but I want to. That's my goal. I think in like for music as well, for me, like writing music is really therapeutic, but I also think it's important that like honesty is really important. And the amount of people that have come to me and said that like my music has like they understand how I feel. Not only is that a really important thing for me, but hopefully it's an important thing for them as well, because it means that I've opened up about something that they get, and then they've opened up to me, and hopefully that means they open up to their circle and they open up to the people they love. I think like it's really important in music to put that out, to be honest with yourself, and therefore to be honest with other people, and be like, you're not an outsider.
Right.
And if you are an outsider, you can own it, because there's millions of other outsiders. You know, like
almost as if we're not really outsiders after all, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a bit of an oxymoron, but
okay. So what's next for you?
I've just got to finish my album.
Yeah,
I'm finishing my album.
The single is lovely.
Thank you.
And you worked with the internet before.
I did,
yeah. And Stormzy. Any other dream collaborations coming up for you? Or do you have any dream collaborations?
In terms of like for my album, it's just going to be a song by song thing. I think there's people I've thought of, but I'm like, it will just depend on how the song kind of turns out. And then I'll be like, I would love to hear this person here, or like I feel like I need a different perspective on this thing. But like my perspective is limited by myself, so like I'd love to get somebody else in to give theirs. So that would like it would just be whoever it is to that song. But yeah, there's definitely who would I really, if I could pick anyone off the top of my head to work with, I would.
Could you fit Beyonce into your sound?
Oh, I mean, like 150%. But like, but I almost think of like Beyonce is like on a different plane of existence. Like I feel like she just does what she wants to do.
Well, you shouldn't count yourself out though. You never know. You never know. So where can our listeners find you online? Where can they get your music?
I'm just on all of the things. It's just at Raleigh Ritchie. It's the same. It's RALEIGH RITCHIE.
Beyonce, if you're out there listening, I don't know. I feel like maybe she has some kind of weird Google search, but like audio for her name, like, you know. So Beyonce, if you're out there and you're listening,
And
Raleigh Ritchie is waiting for you. But you're amazing too. Thank you for coming by. I have
Thank
one
you.
last final, totally irrelevant question.
Yeah.
What's your skincare routine? Because your skin is amazing.
Is it?
Yes. Look at you. Just clear. I love it.
Thank you. It's just like it's cocoa butter, just cream.
Okay. Cocoa butter. Okay.
Pretty boring.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've stopped using cocoa butter on my face.
Yeah, you shouldn't do
because,
that. It's a little.
Yeah, it's too thick.
Yeah.
So I just use this it's like Nivea men's moisturizer.
Thank you, Raleigh. I appreciate you coming by.
Thanks
and
for having me.
You were awesome.
And shouts to Bim as well.
Thank you to Raleigh Ritchie for joining us today. Be sure to check out his new single, Time in a Tree. It is beautiful and haunting and just what we need for these times. Much love to our producers, TK Dutes and Julia Furlan, plus Camila Salazar for additional assistance. Bim, we miss you. Come back. Stay tuned for more. Season 3 is on its way. It's very, very close. In the meantime, stay thirsty, friends. Do you have a playlist already on your phone at the ready?
Oh, one of those playlists.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, okay.